Welcome back to another night of Math with Miss Sack. Now tonight we're looking at proportions and percentage problems. So for example, if I have a question like this, what percent of 90 is 27? The first thing I'm going to do is look at translating the words into math symbols. Whenever I see what, it means I'm looking for something. So we're going to let this be our variable. Okay, so what percent of, this is interesting, of is always multiplication. And then 90, oh look at that, that's already in math, that's easy, is 27. What math symbol is? Equals, good. And I can bring this right down. Already I'm really close to having English translated into math. So what percent of 90 is 27? Now, percent. I need to express percent as a ratio. Now, whenever I see percent, it's out of 100, right? And it's some number out of 90. I'm sorry, some number out of 100. Whenever I see what percent together, this is x over 100. Anytime you see what percent, it's x over 100. Okay, then I want to know of 90 is 27. Oh, this is so cool. This actually looks like something I can solve. All right, well, the first thing I'm going to do is end up trying to get my 90 from this side over to this side of my equation. So I'm going to multiply by 1 over 90, and my 90s end up crossing out, and I've got to multiply this side by 1 over 90. And in order to do the multiplication here to simplify, I'm going to have to put a 1 under my 27. Let's see what this gives me. Well, I get 1 times x over 100 equals 27 times 1 over 90. And if I simplify this just a wee bit more, I'm going to get x over 100 is 27 over 90. Oh, this is so cool. Now I've got ratios. Remember that I can set two ratios opposite of my equal sign. Ratio 1 here equal to ratio 2. And a ratio is just some number divided by some number equals some number divided by some number. That's all a ratio is. And now I have x over 100 equals 27 over 90. Well, in order to solve this using ratios, now some of you are looking at me and going, Miss Sack, now I could just simply multiply both sides by 100. And yes, that would technically be correct. And you could multiply both sides by 100. That's going to give you x equals 2700 over 90. My zeros cross out, and I get 270 divided by 9, which equals 30. Okay, the other way I can do this that I want to show you right here, though, is where I solve it using my cross multiplication, where I multiply things that are on the opposite sides of the equal sign. So here, in this case, it's 90x equal to 100 times 27. Are you with me so far? Now, in order to do this, I divide both sides by 90, and again divide both sides by 90, and my x equals 2700 over 90. My zeros cancel out. And oh, this looks very familiar. My x equals 30. Ooh, cool. So the other way that I could express this question, going back up here, what percent of 90 is 27, is to say what percent is 27 out of 90. Cool beans. Set it up as a ratio. Let's look at doing another example. For those of you who actually like the translation approach, let's look at this. go ahead and on your own paper, see if you can give me the translation for this. Come up with a math sentence for me. Good. Hopefully you have X% of 45 equals 10. All right. And again, remember that when I have this situation, what percent? This equals X over 100 times 45 equals 10. All right, I'm going to end up trying to get I'm going to express this as a ratio. So if I divide both sides by 45, then I get X over 100 equals 10 over 45. 45's canceled out, right? Because that's over 1. This is over 1. Hopefully you figured out that multiplying by 1 over 45 is the same as dividing. And I get X over 100 equals 10 over 45. And this is just the same as saying what percent? What percent is always X over 100 is 10 out of 45. And in order to solve this, I would have 45x equals 10 times 100, right? Because I'm multiplying these and these. Then I end up dividing both sides by 45, divide both sides by 45, and my X equals something like this, which is a very small number. Okay. Do me a favor and set this up as a ratio, and we'll check your answer when you're done. All right, hopefully you recognize that what percent is automatically X over 100 and is 9 out of 45. And once I have this, I can end up setting them equal to each other and cross multiplying. I multiply my X times my 45 and set that equal to 9 times 100. Divide by 45 so that I get X by itself. And X equals 900 divided by 45, which, by the way, is 20. And remember, my question was what percent? So my unit is percentage. X is 20% of 45. All right, you can always check this by saying, going back up here and saying, is 20 over 100 the same as 9 over 45? And what I would end up doing is plugging it into a calculator, and you would see that 0.2 equals 0.2. So yes, this is the same. Set this up as a ratio on your own and solve. When you're done, let's check your work. Welcome back. This is what you should have. What percent of 320 is 1.6? This should be what you have. Now I'd like you to solve for X and tell me what X equals. You should have had X equals 0.5%. If you didn't, go back and check your work. Watch the video above and redo it and see if you can get my answer. Make sure you show your work and have your notes ready for me for class tomorrow. All right. Whoops. All right, welcome back. Let's do some more proportions and percent equations. Let's look at this problem. What is 16% of 261? Now we're going to look again at setting this up as a ratio, but in order to do that, the first thing I want to do is show you how we're going to get there by just translating this into English. All right. I'm sorry, from English into math. Start with English. I end up with math. All right, what do I use for what? Oh, yay, x. Good. Is equals. I've got a number here, yay. 16%. Of is always what? Multiplication. Oh, yay, I've got another number. 261. All right, we're not quite done yet. I want to turn this symbol into this percentage symbol right here. I want to turn that into a fraction. Whenever I see x percent, it's always the same as x over 100. So in this case, 16% is going to equal 16 over 100 because percent is always out of 100. So let's rewrite this. I've got x, what is 16 over 100 times 261. All right, well, this is easy. This is just simply straight math. So all I'm going to do to solve this now is to put a little 1 under my 261, and I'm just going to multiply straight across. This one's super sweet. X equals 16 times 261 over 100 times 1. That's not so bad. So somebody plug this into a calculator, and what am I going to get? All right, hopefully your calculator gave me what my calculator did. And remember that in order to solve this, anytime I'm dividing by 100, it's like moving a decimal in to the left the same number of zeros I have. Well, here I have 2 zeros, so I'm going to write 4,176, and I shouldn't have written my comma yet because I'm going to bring in a decimal, and I'm going to bring it in 2 places. So my final answer is 41.76. And I wanted to know, what is 16% of 261? Well, the answer is 41.76. So if I set this up as a ratio, it would be 41.76 out of 261 is the same thing as 16 out of 100. All right. Good job, guys. Because my 41.76 over 261 simplifies to 0.16, and 16 out of 100 is also 0.16, then yes, these ratios are equal, and it is true that 41.76 is 16% of 261. Good, let's do a couple more examples like this. All right, if I'm looking at this same thing, what number? That's the same thing as just simply asking what is 25% of 480. So what is going to translate straight into English the same way that what number does. So go ahead and write your math sentence for me using all of this. Let's check it. Good job. X is 25% of 480. I still got to deal with my percent sign though. So X is 25 out of 100 times 480. This one's super easy. I'm just going to multiply right across. Make sure I add a 1 under my 480. And I get 25 times 480 over 100 times 1. Now I can just plug this into a calculator, and I'm going to get, and hopefully you got 120. Now I want to show you that I could solve this using ratios pretty easily. If I said 120 out of 480 is the same as 25 over 100. Okay, hopefully you see that this proportion is the same thing as what I just solved here. So if I wanted to come back up to this problem and express it as a ratio, I could have what number X is 25% of 480. That's my total number, so that would go down here. And this is the same thing as this guy right here. Either way solves it. It's whichever you prefer as far as the method. You do not have to solve this using ratios. It just does make things a little bit easier sometimes when they cross out. Let's do one more example. I would like you to set this up and solve this, and then we'll check your answer. All right, welcome back. Let's check your answer. All right, hopefully you set your problem up just like this, or alternately, you could have said that x over 175 is equal to 15 out of 100. That works too. This is ultimately what you should have had for your x. Well done. Let's move on to the last way that I might see proportions and percents. All right, let's look at this one. This is a situation where I have a percentage starting my sentence. And for this one, I know my percentage, and I still want to put it into math terms. So I'm going to put everything into, all of my English into math terms. Go ahead and see if you can figure out what this sentence is going to be based on the practice we've been doing. Pause me and let's check your work. Hopefully you remembered that what number is always represented by x. And hopefully you remembered that 71% is the same as 71 over 100 times x equal to 87. Okay, well, in order to get x by itself, I'm going to have to do something. What is that something? Well, I'm going to end up having, I've got a fraction over here. So I'm going to have to multiply by its opposite to get it over here. Because remember, I want this guy over here by his onesie. So I got to get this out, and the only way to do it is to invert it and multiply by the inversion. So x is what? This number. At this point, 87 over 1 times 100 over 71. Plug it into your calculator. It's going to be 87 times 100, and then divide by 71. And what do you get? Well, x is a really scary number. It's about, and I use a dot above my equal sign to mean about, 122.5. Yes, that answer is actually right. It's going to go on a long way down here. But this works. Just round it to the 10th place. All right, let's look at how else I could have solved this. I could have solved this using ratios. Remember that 71% I can express as 71 100ths. And I'm going to use is 87 over here equals 8. Now, is 87 going to go on my bottom? No, why not? Because it's 71% of some bigger number that's going to be 87. So this is a scenario where my 87 goes up here, and my x is going to go on the bottom. And I would end up solving it using cross multiplication. 71x equals to 87 times 100. I divide by 71 on both sides. And oh, look at that. That's the exact same thing I got down here. So on this situation, ratios might be easier for you than remembering to multiply by a reciprocal, because that can get pretty icky. Let's do another example like this. Let's say what percent of 320 is 1.6? Well, in this situation, I have x percent of 320 is 1.6. Oh, this is interesting. X percent. Remember when I had 20%, I expressed that as 20 over 100? So if I have x percent, I'm going to express that as x over 100. Nothing crazy. All right. X over 100 times 320 is 1.6. Notice I could also express this as a ratio. What percent of 320, 320 is my bigger number, is 1.6? And if I did it as a ratio, I'd end up with 320x equals 1.6 times 100. And then I divide by 320 and divide by 320, and you get x equals 1.6 times 100 over 320. Let's see. Here, I'm going to end up needing to get rid of this guy on both sides before I can deal with this guy. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 100, and I get x times 320 equals 1.6 times 100. Divide by 320. Divide by 320. Oh, look, that's the exact same thing I have down here. Cool beans. All right, let's do another one. Let's look at this one. 640 is what percent of 32? I'd like you to translate this to English, and then I'd also like you to try writing it as a ratio. All right, make a math sentence, just translating it to English, and then make sure you do your ratio form too. Pause me and let's check. All right, let's look at this. Notice that 640 is what percentage? So it's going to be some part of 32. So my of 32 is going to be my bottom here. Let's just double check this. Remember that 32x is 640 times 100. All right, I'd have to divide by 32 and do that again here. So x equals 640 times 100 over 32. Do I get that here? Well, to get this 100 out, I'm going to have to multiply both sides by 100 and put that over 1. My 100 crosses out, and over here I get 100 times 640 equals to x times 32. Divide by 30. I hope you followed the directions that you couldn't hear at that point, and you made a math sentence here, translating this phrase, and then you wrote your ratio, remembering to keep your percentage on your left side of your equal sign, and the other things that you know over here. Pause me, finish that up, and then we'll see how you did. All right, hopefully you set this up as x over 100 times 60 equals 114. And you recognize that your is number goes up here at the top. Is 114 is going to be your top number. And your of number is going to go down here on the bottom of your ratio. You might want to write this down, guys, that when you're setting these up as ratios, it's percent equal to my is number over my of number. So my is number is 114, and my of number is 60. All right, we'll do more practice with these in class. Make sure you bring your notes for all 3 videos, and I will see you in the morning on Monday.